for this reflective time. So at the end of this morning, both Ed and Karina were talking a little bit about, if you like, the unlearnings that are upon us, if you like. Yeah, so in other words, becoming more conscious of what we did learn once upon a time, what was considered foundational to the whole spiritual meaning of our lives, and obviously our fidelity to the church, and that now it would seem that a lot of those ways of seeing and understanding are no longer meaningful, and that there's a sense in which we're called to move beyond them, and the moving beyond them. Again, to repeat what I said yesterday, I don't understand that as dumping. I think it's outgrowing, which is a very different thing. So, for a few moments of silence, just to reconnect with that concern that two people voiced, and is there maybe there for the rest of you as well. Just maybe with a pen and paper, again, some words or phrases for over a 5 or 6 minutes of silence. What are some of the things that it would seem that I'm either asked to let go of or I feel called to let go of? And then what are some of the things that are inviting me to take them on board? And acknowledging that there's a tension there between the two. We might also want to ask ourselves, who can I call on to help and support me in that transitional journey? Might be a spiritual director, might be a close friend, might be a priest, might be a classmate, might be a fellow sister, whatever. Yeah, so it's something about the acknowledgement that there is a process of movement, of transition, and just maybe naming for oneself some of the understandings that are no longer relevant or meaningful. And then what are the new understandings that are inviting me and inviting my discernment and my attention at this time? So 1 more minute and then I'll invite us back. Okay, so I'm opening the space for a few moments in case anybody wants to speak to anything that you've been thinking about or writing down. If not, we'll move on, but I just want to allow the space. Or indeed, if there's anything else left over from the work, from the 2 sessions of today, that you want me to go back to, or that you want to get some more clarity on or something, then you can ask for that at any stage during this session.
Was it Chris? Were you sharing that? And was it Mary Lou you said was sharing the difficulty of balancing Christianity and what we were brought up on? Was
Yeah.
who? Well, that I missed what you said, but I um, I was in the same boat. I shouldn't say
Okay.
was. um, in fact, I was taking a course with Brian Swim. In fact, Ed, were you taking that course, Cosmogenesis? And it was all on the powers of the universe.
Right.
And what I kept doing is, just putting into Christian language, for me, there are powers of God. For
Okay.
example, he asked us to write down uh, turning points in our lives,
Yes.
that brought us to the next step of our evolution. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
spiritual evolution. And and I've done that many times before, but I always said it was the spirit that moved me
Mm.
in my
Mhm.
discernment. And so it was just a different language. But I really struggled. That was all during Lent that we had that course. I think it was like 12 weeks or so. It was very long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I struggled because I felt I was no place.
Mm.
I wasn't fully in believing in my Christianity. I wasn't fully with the new cosmology. I was I wasn't any place. I guess you'd say I was on the fringe.
Okay.
and and that's I don't like that feeling. And gradually, I finally just said to God, help me. I'm no place. I couldn't
Uh-huh.
pray, and yet I was always praying, if you know what I mean. And even in the night when I would wake up, it would be going through my mind. So that, as you said, what is prayer? Prayer is like finding a word for love, and
Mhm.
that's what it comes down to. So eventually, what I said came to it because I'm also a very practical person. I said, I have to be who I am. I have to
Right.
be Mariana.
Okay.
And I have to choose. I believe in the new cosmology, yet being brought up in the Christian faith and as a sister, well, it's 70 years I celebrate in September. That's a long time. And I want to hold on to what gives me meaning. So
Right.
came to the conclusion to thine own self be true. And
Mhm.
what I felt was true to myself over all these years that I can hold both. I can hold
Mhm.
what I believe in my Christian faith. I don't believe in it all. And I can also hold the new cosmology, which I deeply believe in. And there's always going to be that tension, but I can say right now, I'm okay. I
Okay.
don't, I'm okay. I'm not feel that terrible struggle that I went through during Lent.
Mm.
And, because Lent, the whole redemption thing, I don't believe in that,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, God the Father sending his son to suffer and die for our sins, that never made any sense to me.
Right.
You know, I mean, even baptism. What about, the millions of the pagan babies, And none, so even growing up, we used to, you know, collect money for the pagan babies. I always had a problem with that.
Mhm.
What if I was born over in India? I'd be a pagan baby. Does that mean I wouldn't go to heaven? You know? So all of those kind of things. The original sin.
Mhm.
So that doesn't make sense. Baptism. Even what I found great, great, profound meaning in was Teilhard's Mass of the World.
Yeah.
And we celebrated that with the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood last month. That was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Mhm.
And so, what I find myself during Mass is I'm translating the body and the blood of Christ
Mm.
and the suffering of the world, the suffering of the earth. I I'm using all those words rather than the words that I'm hearing.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but as I said, right now, I'm okay.
All right. Good
But
for you.
yeah, but
Okay.
but I was a mess during Lent. Yeah. But I do have a spiritual director, so so that's a big help. And
I get it.
also, I belong to a group. We follow the writings of Thomas Berry, and at this point, we're all elderly. So we wanted a name of the group. So one of the husbands of one of the members says, "Well, how about why don't you call yourself the Elderberries?"
Hmm.
All right, wasn't that clever? So we're the Elderberries, the elders who follow Thomas Berry. And because I can't talk to the other sisters that I live with over 100 retired sisters here at the
Wow.
Mother House, and very few of them have no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about this. And so I have this group. We meet once a month. And right now, Dermot, we're reading your book. Where is it here? The Divine Radiance in Human Evolution.
Okay.
So we're
Good for you.
reading that. And we take
All
a
right.
chapter a month. So
Very
that's
good.
what keeps me sane.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Right. Follow that, anybody, if you wish.
Well, I just want to say I'm on the same path as you are, Mary Ann.
Oh, okay.
But I felt I wrote this a week or two ago. I said I'm in between. I wasn't
Mhm,
Yes.
sure how to describe what I was in between, but I wasn't settled in one thing and grounded in it. But I could
mhm,
feel myself moving. The things that I wanted to mention though, a couple of things was sometimes I feel guilty. I feel like
Yeah.
mhm,
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm giving up something. It nourished me for a long time, but it
Yeah.
and so but I've grown to trust the spirit inside me. I've grown to trust the what I call
Sure.
the
Sure.
instincts because I could tell there's something deeper that's calling to me, and so uh,
Right.
that's the other thing I wanted to say. And the last thing is, and it happened in yesterday's class. I think when Chris had these electronic markings on
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
oh,
screen,
Yeah.
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 uh,
Pulsations.
yeah, sensations. I had this sense that we could feel God, that it isn't just in my head, that there was somehow it wasn't just, it was deeper than just an instinct or a sense, that there was an actual experience of something deeper than that, exemplified by what was on the screen, but there was a sense that no, God is here in so many different ways, and just I get inklings of it by either what people say or what happens outside, etc. So God becomes more real, but in a sense still abstract. I can't articulate it, but it's real and it's felt, and it's a sense. It may be felt inside me, but it's a sense of something I'm connected to.
Sure.
Words
Sure.
fail me in trying to explain it.
Yeah. And something it sounds like that you're growing into in a kind of a new way or a new strategy or a new articulation or expression.
Yes.
And as you say, you don't have the words now. And you know, for many of the great mystics, there was this movement around the Middle Ages called the apophatic movement. And for the apophatic mystics, words were always inadequate. Again, I think it's very close to what you're saying. They had an experience for which they couldn't quite find the words.
Yeah. Yes.
And so then it was a case of, can we trust the experience, not feel guilty about having the experience, and allow it, in a sense, allow it to be and see where it will move towards or see what it will lead us towards. Yeah.
I think that that's what you're saying, Ed. I guess I experience that not all the time, but I have experienced it. And what becomes difficult is how to express that to someone. Now I have a privilege of, I do have people that come to get on my table, and then we do have a time to talk before, because they're coming really with a health issue or some issue is bringing them to the table here. And sometimes our what we might see or think or feel is so in sync that it's odd. It's like I can say it to one of them, to someone that's on my table, but to say this to somebody out on the street or someone who has never experienced anything like that, those are words that are hard to come by. Hard to know how to explain that to someone. And I guess the folks that the sisters in my community, many of them that I'm good friends with are really, they understand this information probably much better than I do. Who I worry about or I'm concerned about and wish I could bring to another step forward would be like my nieces and nephews who have no idea. Now some of them they're in their 40s, and I have some younger ones, but I'm talking about they have no idea who I am, what I do as a sister. I mean, they think, I'm with a group of women and we do some good works, and isn't that nice? Isn't that good of us? But they really don't have any sense of, even though they were all brought up Catholic, all that, they just tossed it out the window. I don't know how to bring them back in, how to even approach them. So that's what I put down here. I have no idea what is the next step that I can take, except we were talking yesterday about looking at some YouTubes, and I did do some of that last night, and I don't know if that's just the way to go, something that will be that they can, I don't know, grab onto, because it's not me, it's not Aunt Chris telling them something that they think is goofy.
I could really relate to Mary Ann and Ed. I've been in this thinking for a long time, and so most of the old things I've let go of. And sometimes I feel that I become loose as a goose. When Ed brought up about feeling slightly guilty and yet trying to be faithful to what I personally feel in here.
Mm.
And because I live in an environment where there really isn't anybody to talk this stuff with, okay? And I dare say I don't think there's many in our community, at least here in this area. I don't know. They're so small we hardly ever see each other. But I sometimes feel that, when you see something like it's ugly or it's kind of dangerous, you want to like go around it or get away from it or
Mhm.
not deal with it or feel
Mhm.
frightened. Sometimes when I'm around that left thinking on
Mhm.
I'm kind of terrorized by it. I haven't gotten, I think, to the point where Marianne said, "This is who I am, and God, if I'm wrong," and this is what I do say to God, "If I'm wrong about all this, I can't do anything about it at this point."
So
Um,
then you let go and you trust.
oh yeah,
Um,
and that is much more scary than it's never been hard to let go of all the other stuff. I think I kind of
mhm.
was born in sort of a liberal family for those
Mhm.
days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hardly wouldn't know it now, but so I haven't had a lot of problem giving up stuff. It's thinking is
What next? Where next? Then
where
comes the challenge.
have
Yeah. Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's scary.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And again, let me go back for a moment to Marianne, and then also just to speak to you, Chris. Um, Marianne mentioned two things. She mentioned this reading approach and this group that meets occasionally.
Mhm.
Um, I think there are two outlets there that are quite important. I think in this complex world in which we're in, and I know it's easier said than done, particularly for those of us in religious life, but to have some kind of a soul mate, whether we call it a
Mhm.
spiritual director, whether we call it a trusted friend, whatever, is quite important simply to unload and simply to have conversations with. And the conversations don't have to be complex or profound. Better still, if one can find two or three kindred spirits, and it might be a cup of coffee once a week, or it might be a more formal discussion once a month, but there's something about that little communal network that I think is all important. It becomes a kind of a sounding board so that I can, as it were, launch the ideas out there and know that they're going to be held and that they're not going to be thrown back at me, so to speak. Um, and I think for you, Chris, I mean, I experienced the same thing with my nephews and nieces. They're wonderful human beings. I don't have an opportunity really of having conversations with them, and I wish at times I could.
Mhm.
And I think what they know, and I guess would be the same for your family, is that we keep a good quality of friendship, and
Mhm.
therefore maybe someday, sometime, they might turn to me and ask an appropriate question. Um, in fact, I found it interesting in my family, this is back about 20 years ago, in which we had a suicide of my 18-year-old niece at the time.
Mhm.
And it was amazing what the siblings and the first cousins came up with and the questions they began to ask. You know, I think it often takes a crisis to bring
Mhm.
people to a point where they do want to open up.
Mhm.
And certainly for us here in Ireland, we went through this terribly wealthy phase between 2000 and between 1995 and 2005, and that's when a lot of my nephews and nieces were growing up. So for them, kind of job and money are their kind of gods. It
Mhm.
takes something of a crisis to help them to go to another level and open up a conversation at another level. So I think the greatest service I or you can render them is to let them know that we're there as trusted friends. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's probably
Yeah.
as much as
Yeah.
as life or God expects of any of us.
You,
Yeah.
you know, Dermot, one of the things that helps me is just, it helps me that you are a priest saying this. And it
Uh-huh.
helps me that everybody in this also is religious, because it feels like, okay, I'm not the only one that
Mhm.
thinks this way. And you all are a certain authority, so that I kind of respect the commitment of your lives.
Mm.
And I say, well, if they think that and I think that, well, maybe that's okay.
Right.
There's something about
Right.
that I'm just aware of. If we didn't have that similar background, it would be a little different. So I feel
Mhm.
more comfortable
Yeah.
in sharing with, to a certain degree, people that come from a similar background and of belief system.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Ed, I see you as religious. Really, when I hear you speak, and I know you shared that you were a Jesuit for some years,
I was in the
but
seminary. I never was ordained. I was there for
yes, but
6 years.
that's okay. But you have that same longing. You have that
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
you've been pulled along with the magnet,
Mhm.
as the rest of us have.
Yes.
But so that it helps me to hear you, and we're all somebody's calling me. Let me get rid of this. Um, uh, I'll call them back later. Um, this is a busy time. I'll call you back later. I'm on a Zoom meeting. Okay, thanks. Okay. Um, my two grandnieces are having babies this month. I made them a little baby blanket, but I also bought them the book written by uh, um, Ed. You can help me. Morgan, what was her first name? She wrote the book Born with a Bang.
Oh,
Yes,
Jennifer.
Jennifer
Jennifer
Morgan.
Morgan. Yeah.
So in the box with the baby blanket, I put that Born with a Bang. Now the
Good for
baby's
you.
not going to be able to read it, but I really wrote to the parents in the front of the book, and they
Mhm.
will read it because
Mhm.
they actually they're the children of my niece, who was my godchild, who turned Jewish when she got married, and now that the Jewish grandmother has died, they really don't practice anymore. They just kept the kosher kitchen because of the grandmother. But the two children, even though I went to their bat mitzvahs, they don't they don't practice their Jewish faith anymore. So they would be open to something like this. And the other family who have older children, I bought Matthew Fox's book for children, and I forget the name of it, but you can look it up. It is so good. It's about,
Mm.
the beginnings of it all, but
Yeah,
in words that children can understand.
sure.
So
Okay,
you're
folks.
so you're getting to the children, but it's the parents that are going to read the books to
Yeah.
the children.
Okay, that's all right too.
Yeah.
That's
So
okay
that
too.
book is The Children. I wanted to write that down. The Children by Matthew Fox. Yes.
Yes, there's two now.
Okay. Thank you. No,
Yeah.
that's good
Yeah.
because
And they're
they,
very well done.
okay. Yeah.
But I think even
Okay.
with this retreat, people are asking us, they're asking me, what are you doing all week? Because I put a sign on my door, please do not disturb Zoom meeting, So I have a chance to be able to tell them about it.
Yeah.
My Jewish friend is coming, another friend is coming Friday afternoon. And I find my lay friends are more open to this than my religious sisters are, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yet many of
Oh,
our sisters are really deeply into it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to change gear for a moment. Marianne did mention the book that the group is reading,
Yes.
which is this one, Divine Radiance in Human Evolution, which is what is my latest book. And I'm not trying to sell it now or anything, but I did thought I might end today's work and this session coming back to the point that I made this morning in the input on Earthlings, that we are the beneficiaries, we're the participants of a 7 million year story. because that bit, we won't be coming back to that in the rest of the retreat. So I just thought I'd fill you out a little bit on that one tonight as a kind of an inspiration to take away from the work of today. And I'm going to do it by showing just 5 or 6 slides. You don't need to write anything. Follow along with the slides as if it's a kind of as if you're kind of listening to a story, so to speak. So just bear with me now for a moment, and we'll bring this up, and we'll get moving on it. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce this short reflection with this quotation from Ilia Delio. She says, "We have no overarching story that unites us and instills hope and courage. In my view," she says, "evolution is the story, the meta-narrative of our age. It is not only a scientific explanation for physical reality, it is rather the overarching description of reality, the cosmological framework for all contemporary thought." Now, she's talking about the evolution of the whole universe. What I'm going to be talking about in a moment is the evolution of our own species. In other words, I think we need a human story to match the elegance of the cosmic story. And in a sense, that's what Pope Francis was also saying in number 118 of Laudato Si. There can be no renewal of our relationship with nature without a renewal of humanity itself, for which we need a bigger story, so to speak. So very quickly then, to go back over what I shared with you today. So this is the site in Tanzania, in Northwest Africa, where the Leakeys made the discovery back in 1959. And the discovery included the skull that you're looking at in the picture, and also another number of bones that made up the skeleton. And then I say officially confirmed in 1964. In actual fact, was never really officially confirmed, but it became an accepted date 2 million years ago for our human origins. Then this is Donald Johanson, and in front of him is the skeleton of Lucy, and the discovery he made in Ethiopia in the mid-1970s, dating our origins at 3.1 million years ago. And then I moved on then to the date of 4.4 million years ago, 1994. And you're looking here at Tim White, the guy with the glasses, who is now generally recognized as a world authority on this material. And then the final date that we came to is the 7 million years. Another skull discovered by this Frenchman. In fact, the skull was discovered by the young African man there beside him with the big long name at the top of your screen. Now, let me give you an enlarged picture of the skull. And this is the wonder of modern science.
Oh.
It's how in the name of God could anybody do anything of any significance with a rather weird looking object like that? And then there's an artist's impression of what this ancestor looked like. Most people assume it was a male. I'm taking the liberty of saying it might have been a female, and therefore calling it Lady Toumai. And it's known as the Toumai skull. The word Toumai belongs to the native language of Chad in central North Africa. It means the person who survives against heavy odds.
Wow.
The person who survives against heavy odds. So this was the skull that was taken around the world over a period of 6 years before they eventually made a definitive date for it. And despite the weird nature of it, thanks to the amazing technology of our time, and particularly laser technology, they were able to identify 8 features of this skull that confirmed for them that it was the skull of a human person and not merely a primate. And I'll just give you 2 of the 8 points. The position of the foramen magnum, the opening at the base of the skull where the spinal cord enters, is similar to humans and differs from apes, suggesting that this creature walked upright and therefore was primarily human. Secondly, Thumai also had small canines, large molars and premolars with thick enamel, a pattern in teeth that belongs uniquely to the human family and usually not found in any other species. So it's those little minute details, putting 8 of them together, that convinced them to a point where they were eventually able to say this was a human ancestor and is the oldest ancestor we know at the present moment. And that date will be pushed back in due course. Now, all this material is coming out of Africa. And the implications for this are enormous in terms of our spirituality, our theology, and indeed our politics and economics too. Africa is our enduring home as a species. We all know what it means to have a nice home and to keep a tidy home and to keep our home beautiful. Our collective home at the moment is in a bit of a mess, with a tremendous amount of poverty, violence, exploitation, and so forth. And so at some stage, the governments of our world, how, when, and where, I don't know, will have to come around to facing the fact that we need to address the reality of our collective home as a species and begin to treat it in a much more loving and caring way. Secondly, this is where our latest evolutionary ancestors have come from. We call them Homo sapiens, which means the wise, self-confident species. And we remain very wise when we're very close to nature. Thirdly, we use in the Christian language the word incarnation, God coming in the flesh. This is where it first happened. Not in the Holy Land, but in East Africa 7 million years ago. And our God, who was fully there with us, wasn't looking down the timeline and saying, I'm now going to co-create these creatures called humans, but then I'm going to wait for about 7 million years until I send my son to redeem and save them. As Marianne was saying, it's not at all easy to believe in that stuff anymore. So if incarnation is fully happening in East Africa 7 million years ago, then where does that leave our belief in the person of Jesus? And there are 3 important words here, and I'll be coming back to them tomorrow, that in terms of our Christian story, we now should see Jesus as an affirmation, confirmation, and celebration of all we achieved over the 7 million years because we got it right most of the time. And therefore, Jesus does not come to rescue us from anything because we got it right most of the time. That we should see and understand Jesus as an affirmation, confirmation, and celebration of all we achieved over the 7 million years. And that changes the whole understanding of our faith from a Christian point of view. I know there are some theologians looking at this. I'm not aware of any theologian yet that's really looking at it seriously, but hopefully that'll happen in due course. Now, moving ahead a little bit, I want to show you one other slide, and it's this. So this guy's name is Dietrich Stout. He's professor of anthropology in Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. He's in his laboratory. The floor is covered with stones, and all those stones have been imported from East Africa. Oh. And he's doing a thing called knapping, K-N-A-P-P-I-N-G. He has a stone on his lap, and he has a stone hammer, and he's trying to convert the stone into a creative object like you're seeing on your screen on the right-hand side. Mm. So he's not allowing himself to use any electrical equipment, and he's not allowing himself to use any chisels or hammers or anything. Stone to stone. He's trying to imitate what our ancient ancestors did. And they began, thus far, the oldest date we have, again, thanks to the discoveries of an American team, is 3.3 million years ago. Now, I hope I won't keep you awake all night trying to figure this one out. That 3.3 million years ago, our ancestors were creating creative stonework. Not merely were they doing something very creative, they were selecting and discriminating the kind of stone that would best be suited for that work. When this man is doing this kind of creative work, he works with experimental candidates, and he also has brain scientists working with him. So the people doing the napping, they're rigged up with electrodes around their heads, and the electrodes are linked onto a computer. When they begin doing the work first, as you can imagine, the indicators on the computers indicate a very strong sense of frustration. The parts of our brain associated with frustration begin to show up. But as they persist at it, and quite quickly, the computers show up very high levels of creativity. And that's the kind of scientific evidence to show that our ancient ancestors, in this case going back 3.3 million years ago, were not some wild, primitive savages affected by original sin. They were incredibly creative people with a deep love for nature, and that was their greatness. So where did we lose all that greatness? We kind of lost it with the agricultural revolution about 12,000 years ago, when we began building up kind of empires, and we began parceling out land, and encouraging people to fight over it and treating the land as an object. And that's the beginning of what today we call the patriarchal system. And I think that whole patriarchal system is beginning to collapse. And therefore we are living through a very painful time, but also a time of great hope. A time in which hopefully more and more people from the ground up will begin to reclaim the creative side of ourselves. Artificial intelligence, I think, might help us in this. I know it's a very complex subject and there's a lot of concern about it, but I think it has the potential to reawaken us to this deep creative strain, which has been our default position for most of our time on Earth. So that's what I'm going to stop. I thought I would just leave you with those, with that little bit of the story as a final kind of piece of work from today. Because tomorrow we're going to go into our Christian story. We haven't looked at that yet. And in that, and there is a way of approaching our Christian story, which embraces and honours that material that I've shared with you tonight. So that'll be the work for tomorrow. Anybody have a final question or comment?
Other than it's as exciting
Yeah.
to hear this.
There's a couple of us that have a challenge tomorrow in terms of being able to go to everything.
Okay.
But
yeah,
I just wanted
you
to
have the handouts, and the material is being recorded.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll be able to pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, Dermot, I told the others before when you were working on your computer this morning, I invited a group of artists to come to our mother house and do plein air painting on our beautiful grounds tomorrow. So we'll be spending the whole day with creation. So I'll look at the recordings tomorrow night. So I'll catch
Okay.
up. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
And once
All right, folks. So we'll bring this day and this piece of work to an end.
Mm.
And maybe we can end with just 2 minutes of silence to
Mhm.
let settle into us what we have heard during this day, what we have received, but what we have also shared with one another. And so let's hold the silence. In the silence, let's hold that spirit of gratitude for a few minutes. So in gratitude to our God and in appreciation of one another, we'll end by saying the glory be to the Father together. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Blessings, and I'll see you tomorrow.